And welcome to the Say More section with Brian Hilliard. Holy shit, man. That was a great interview. Please definitely check out that interview. Obviously, if you're hearing the Say More, you already have. And if you did like the interview, make sure you do subscribe. Man, that guy just makes you want to be his best friend.
And he makes you just want to be in love all the time.
Yeah, with anything, everything.
With everything.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he nailed it kind of on the head when he described. He's like I was never really into the guru. I never wanted to follow a guru or be a pledge to a guru. He's like, I just wanted to be the friend to the guru. I just wanted to be everybody's friend. He's just kind of that way. He's like, I just wanted to soak up the knowledge and go right to the source of that experience, the wisdom, the lesson, whatever, and then embody that and live that and share that, and then love with that newfound understanding. So I mean, that really kind of summed up most of his experiences, but can't wait to hear more.
I had a permagrin the entire, I don't know if you noticed or not, but I was like totally permagrin. Like you know how you get sore when you're at a wedding because you're smiling so much? That's kind of how I feel right now. Like I was just grinning from ear to ear the entire interview. I adore that man. He's like that on Facebook too. If you follow him on Facebook, he's like such a cheerleader for like anything I comment on. He's like, you're so amazing. You're the best. And it's like genuine from the heart. Like,
Yeah.
just wow.
Yeah, man. I mean, it like it was present and I was enamored with that. And then you found out that, 10 years ago, he had a debilitating health experience. And, for him to say, well, it changed my whole being and, I'm still reprogramming and or not
recalibrating,
not reprogramming, but recalibrating from that experience. It's just kind of like, how are you? I mean, well, he had too much energy for me to have thought he could ever go through something that,
Well, he did say it was a 10-year
Yes.
ordeal.
Yeah. But I mean, damn, it's just no bitterness to anything. But it didn't sound like I didn't know. Like I said, I didn't know him 10 years ago, but you knew him, and that's kind of how you portrayed him, was just lovable. And I really like his outlook. I loved some of the synchronicities, where we talked about the reaction versus response, and those different states. And but I really loved that. I love the emotional intelligence portion of the conversation and growing and cultivating that emotional intelligence. I think that's a key element to navigating. I think we focus a lot on experiences that bring you into a meditative, questioning, spiritual growth experience. And then there's going out into life and carrying that with you. And I think emotional intelligence is a huge bridge for the interaction of taking that your own personal spiritual experiences and delivering them outward. You have to have emotional intelligence. You have to have patience. And I just really like that concept. I'm going to meditate on that more.
Yeah, well, I think we should talk about it more. I mean, I call it. I love the name emotional intelligence. When I'm dealing with my coaching clients, I call it emotional maturity. And I think there's a difference. I think emotional maturity is because I think most people have the emotional maturity of like, well, your maturity, they say, stops if you have a trauma, and also you learn it from your parents. And most of our parents have the emotional maturity of really like a preteen, 12, 13, 14, when your sort of emotions and hormones are out of control. That's how most people who haven't done self-inquiry work are. You get when you are your thoughts and are your emotions, you're very reactive, right?
Yes.
So the first thing I do is I teach people to meditate. My coaching clients, they have to meditate daily. And then the next thing we work on is emotional maturity. And now what the language that I'm liking now, because then you have the opposite. So then you have the people that are sort of new on the path that are learning how to be more emotionally intelligent. And then you have the people that have been on the path for many years. I was listening to an interview with Jack Cornfield and Tim Ferriss the other day. It was a really good interview.
I
And Tim Ferriss is like, he's like, been studying and doing all this stuff for a long time, self-discovery. And so he's pretty emotionally mature, but he still had, you could tell he had this preconceived notion of what he should appropriate, because I call it, you kind of touched on it in the interview with Brian. There's a time when anger is appropriate, but what happens is people get so much emotions that are repressed that then they'll have an inappropriate amount of anger or sadness, for that matter, in a small situation. It's, when couples, when they fight over the small stuff, or you get mad at your kids for like throwing their underwear on the floor and you get irate about it. It's this repressed emotion. So it's like learning the appropriate response when you have emotional intelligence, emotional maturity, and you haven't repressed everything. And so what Jack Cornfield, Tim Ferriss was like, yeah, I'm having this problem, because he's kind of like you a little bit, where he loves the interview, but then he asks always, like, he's like, this is kind of a personal note. I have a personal thing I want to deal with right now. So he says to Jack Cornfield, he's like, I've got this contractor I'm having to deal with, and it's just like there's so much that's been going wrong. And he said I found myself just like totally losing my shit with this guy, and I feel like not a good spiritual person, basically. And so Jack Cornfield's like, let me tell you a story. About 5 years ago, he was doing the renovation in his house. He had a contractor there, and he needed this kitchen done before they left for Hawaii, him and his wife. And it was like 2 weeks away, and it was like very clear that they wouldn't show up and stuff. And he kept, being polite and then finally he just lost his shit with this contractor. Jack Cornfield did, and he's like, you said you'd have it done, blah blah blah. And the contractor looks at him and goes, oh, so I guess you need it done. And so Jack Cornfield's like, that was inappropriate. And he's like, I had to speak contractor language, right? Because some people just need that.
Yes.
And so, so that to me is emotional intelligence. Is at first it's this emotional maturity that you learn that you are not your thoughts, you're not your emotions. You learn to have space in between, and then you learn, and then there's like equanimity, like Brian was talking about, this calm. And then you start to see your emotions happening, and then they become just like energy. But then there is, even though you see your emotions as just energy, whether it's loneliness or fear or anger or sadness, you see it as just energy, but your mind names it as the whatever it is, and then creates a story around it. But as soon as you start to experience more as just plain old energy, and you don't have a story around it, then you can just let it pass through you. And that's what's been I've been able to do now for a couple of years, and it's awesome.
Well, yeah, and I wish I had been taught that understanding a long time ago, because I definitely know that I was very imbalanced with how I approached using anger, to the point where I remember in my early 20s, I was like, I don't get mad. And I was proud of that. It's like, no, I don't get mad. Well, I get mad. I just don't act in anger until I do, until I can't manage that anymore. And I've had to learn to be mad in the moment. When I'm mad, be mad. And usually when it's like, I'm just being present to the fact that maybe I don't understand why, but I'm very fucking angry about this right now. And part of it is, my wife, and my wife tends to not respond to polite me. I can say something, I'm like, it really bothers me when this happens. And to me, that's a constructive way of communicating in a relationship. Is, this is my grievance. I'm letting you know this is my grievance. How do we work on that? And usually, and this is, we had a very emotionally immature way of communicating about this, because it would often become, well, since you are airing out your grievance, let me air out my grievance about something you do. And then it becomes defending your grievance. It's, well, the only reason I do that is because, and it's this very immature dance of you did this,
And it's repetitive and not constructive.
and it's repetitive, not constructive. So we're being nice and we're being calm, but we're not actually solving anything.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had to learn because a very similar situation where it was like, finally, I was like, hey, what the fuck's going on here? This is ridiculous. I can't live like this. This is absurd. Something needs to change. And then it was like, oh, this seems to be bothering you. Yeah, I told you it was bothering me 20 times. Well, you never told me like that. It's like, well, shit. I didn't know I had to be angry in order for you to get you to listen. But that is how some people communicate. And there are times where it's not unreasonable to be angry when the situation calls for anger or whatever, it's just about being balanced in your response to that. Obviously, imbalanced response to that would be, murdering his family because he was so mad. That's imbalanced. That's also not mature, but it is something that we don't. Well, we repress. I mean, we repress the emotional state of people.
Well, and you learn it from your childhood. Like, I know for me, my mother and father were both incredibly emotionally immature most of their lives, not good communicators. I love them dearly, but that's just the fact of it. And my dad used to give people the silent treatment. He gave me the silent treatment on occasion. He gave my mom certainly, and his wife that he had, after my mom, would give her silent treatment for 2 weeks.
Oh,
would not speak for 2 weeks.
Whoa.
Yeah, right? And so I learned what not to do. And I did find myself, before I became emotionally mature, I would kind of go into that. I would also go into my mom's response, was to yell and scream and throw things.
Yeah.
I had both of those things within me. In fact, I lost my shit with my dad one year. I may have told you this before.
The car ride where you went the wrong way and he...
Yes. So I'll tell the short version of the story because I think we didn't tell it on the podcast. I think it was like just a conversation of ours. But basically, I took my dad to the passport office to get a passport over Christmas. And I was all patient and everything the whole time, driving back and forth a couple times. And then I went the wrong way. Well, he told me to go the wrong way through a parking garage, and then I had to back up very narrow. I was driving my brother's, one of his old pickup. Luckily, it was an old pickup. And I had to back up and turn like a hairpin corner, backing up in a pickup truck, which I couldn't do. And my dad started yelling at me while I was trying to back up and telling me what to do and getting more angry and angrier, which is not. And I finally totally lost my shit and told him, he wasn't fucking helping in any way. I've never spoken to my father like that before, ever. And this was only 10 years ago. No, like 7 years ago. It was only 7 years ago. I was 50 years old. And so he yelled and screamed, backed up, bashed the car up a little bit, or the truck, which fortunately my brother didn't care about. And then on the drive home, I apologized to my dad. He wasn't speaking to me. He gave me the silent treatment about 3 days, even though I said, Dad, after driving for 45 minutes in total silence, I said, Dad, I am sorry. I said I was angry, but I still should not have spoken to you that way, even though I was angry. And but this is why I meditate and do yoga, because I've got that in me. I've got that in me to get incredibly angry, and I don't want to communicate like that.
Yeah. Well, and that's I think the hardest part about people that you're closest to in your life. They tend to be able to bring that out, whatever that anger is, or whatever that, that emotion that you were working on. Yes, you that was an imbalanced response, but it was triggered by not just that one moment of him nagging at you. That was a culmination of every single time that you had that experience. And after 50 years, enough was enough. And the fact that all you did was yell at him was a testament to how much work I'm sure you've done.
And the fact that I was able to apologize to him within a half hour, and I was calm about it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that I think we struggle with a lot is it's easy to kind of manage and also remove yourself from instances where you get too much of that anger response, right? And we're using anger as an example, but I'm sure you live your life where you try to put people around you that support you and don't pull out that kind of a, extreme response. But the people that are closest to us, especially parental figures, they really have a way of triggering that programming.
Well, Debbie Ford was famous for coining this phrase. Debbie Ford was Ariel Ford's younger sister, who wrote the book Dark Side of the Light Chasers and The Right Questions, and several books. And she brought the shadow process to the spiritual community. And she used to say that your buttons were actually wounds.
Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. They're the traumas. I mean, they're the traumas that you have, and it's funny, like you can do years, decades of work, and if somebody presses on that wound in the right way, or the right person presses on that wound in the right way, you're going to get that. You're going to get that from just about anybody in most cases.
Well, what I've found is that as those wounds heal, the buttons completely disappear.
They do disappear. Well, I'm working on that.
No, I promise you they do, and that's why I was able, because my dad, that was, like you said, it was a culmination of everything, but it was an appropriate response to, appropriate for, I guess, all the years that it was repressed. But, there's been many other things in my life that I don't have many buttons anymore. It's pretty awesome.
Well, and that, I think that the healing shows in the fact that even in a situation where most people would say, well, you were totally justified in reacting that way, your response to that reaction was, I don't talk to people that way, and I don't want to talk to you that way. I hold myself accountable and responsible for the part of that was wrong, that I shouldn't have done. And what's interesting is we don't put a lot of value on that in our society. I mean, we kind of do, but that being able to swallow your pride and go to the heart of a matter and say, you know what? Yeah, maybe I was vindicated in that reaction, but I don't want to react that way. My work is to not react that way, and I don't want to be a model for reacting that way. So let me apologize for not living up to my new my standard is beyond that reaction, and I didn't live up to that standard. That's one of the greatest heroic things I think you can do in your life, is hold yourself accountable for the things you do wrong, even if they're socially justified. And we don't talk about Joe Rogan, but the podcast master at this stage in our lives had that happen recently, and he repeated something live on a podcast that was actually turned out to be true, and he didn't vet the information. He just said it, and later he did a full social media response where he said, I fucked up. I shouldn't have said that. That was ignorant of me. And he apologized to millions of people through social media. And all it did was make people shit on him more. And I really think that in our culture, we need to get back to valuing honest apologies when somebody's holding themselves accountable to a bar that most people wouldn't even hold themselves.
Well, I guarantee you, if you actually went through the responses, there was just as many pros and thanking him than there was. And because when you have I think I looked on his podcast today, when you have 10.2 million people following you, and a big, not a big percentage, but a large amount of people making comments, there's always going to be assholes making comments that are going to think you're an asshole, no matter if you're Mother Teresa.
Right. Yeah. Even what 1% of 10 million is still 100,000 people. So yes, I think I did that math right. Let's just say I did. Yeah. Yes, that's a good point. Is I'm focusing on the negative response to that. Even if it was only, 0.1%, it's still thousands of people. So Yes, that is a good point. Is it doesn't have to be a large percentage of people on that level to make it seem like everybody's responding to that way.
Well, yeah, the stars that I follow on Instagram and a few of them that I know personally, it's like the healthy way that I've said how they deal with it is that they just say, God, I wish I could remember who this was, but they're like, the people that are making the negative comments against them, it's like you get, I guarantee you that any successful person is not making any negative comments. Like it's only sort of the unsuccessful people that are that are making the comments,
Yeah.
who cares, and by success I just mean, you know yeah, people that are struggling in their life or jealous or whatever, they're sort of living in those sort of lower, they're not emotionally intelligent.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's true. And I guess even more why we should put a plaque of nobility on instances and actions like that, which are at any level, no matter where you're at, there is the opportunity for personal accountability for something that you've done that you didn't live up to the highest standard for yourself. And I think that's one thing that we tend to live up to other people's standards of ourselves, but we don't put the bar so high for ourselves and try to maintain that high standard for ourselves. And because eventually, I think after enough meditation and enough self reflection, you realize how high the bar can be and how more accountable you can consistently hold yourself to. You got to have forgiveness because you're almost certainly not going to live up to that standard. But you, I think we've talked about it. We are the heroes of our own story. We're the heroes of our own journey, and that heroic bar gets higher and higher. It almost, it moves up as you move up, and it's not something that you should be ashamed of not always living up to, but you should always keep pushing that bar. I think because that will raise the standard for the people around you. You'll be a model and a light for basically being a hero of your own life. And on that note, take a look at Brian. Brian seems to be the hero of his own journey, and it's not because he takes credit for everything that he's done,
Or anything.
really anything he's done, but because he has found a way to use gratitude and humble appreciation and love as his barometer for survival, literally at certain stages of his life, and that is a model to aim for. I mean, that is just a beautiful thing. The way, the way he just is with his love, with his compassion, with his passion. Everything is just, it's grounded in. I have this because I have been able to discover grace in the darkest of places.
Yeah.
So on that note, thank you, Brian, for showing us that grace can be found in the darkest of places, and appreciate, that level of love and appreciation for life and people in it. And I can't wait to talk to him more. And I think that was a beautiful angle and beautiful perspective for, how to find the beauty in life.
And let's talk about how we're going to start this new thing going live on Facebook Monday nights.
Yes. So we are going to start, I think, collecting some questions that we've gotten through different, through the social media platforms. And we're just going to do a little live, maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes Monday nights. And it'll be all opportunity for people to ask questions or maybe just hear me blabber on more while Corrine makes very astute, poignant points.
Pressure.
No pressure. I hold down my end of the bargain very well. So, but yeah, it'll be a cool opportunity. I think it'll be fun. It'll be a little, I'm going to say edgy. I'm going to sound like a dad by saying it's going to be very edgy, but I think we're a little bit nervous to be live. But I think it'll be a cool experiment, and hopefully it'll be another way to interact and really even dive more into the questions that come up within these conversations.
Yeah, and hear what the listeners are enjoying about the podcast, and if they have any requests for future guests and things like that too. So make sure you subscribe, because that helps us, and then that gives you notification when we have new episodes, but also just helps us on Facebook, or on YouTube. So please subscribe.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate all you do in the background, and look forward to next week.
All righty. Good night.
Night.